Okay, so once again, good afternoon and welcome to everybody. I am Valerie Marsh, Executive Director of Arizonans for Safe Technology, and I want to welcome and thank each one of you for taking the time today to meet with us. So we've got about 20 or so minutes of slides that we're going to go through, and then we've allocated a good 40 minutes for discussion, Q&A. We've got a lot of experts on board, so we will make sure to get all of your questions answered. So with that, let's go ahead and start.
And I believe Tom Durham is just coming in, so you might want to give him a special welcome.
Oh, definitely. Tell me when he's in.
I believe he's in now.
Mr. Durham, we just wanted to thank you for joining us. We were just giving y'all a shout out that you guys aren't even sworn in yet, and you're already just pouring yourselves out to get caught up to speed on issues, and thank you. So welcome. Okay, so the current situation in Scottsdale is that we have got an insufficiently regulated rollout of 4G and 5G wireless telecommunications facilities, also known as WTFs. The problem, and many problems coming from this, is that these are placed in residential zones. But the good news is that today you're going to learn about solutions that provide telecommunications service and protect the quiet enjoyment of streets. All right, I am trying to advance to the next slide, and it's not happening. Paul, can you help me out on this, or Ben?
What's going on? The slide?
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. So telecommunication services and wireless broadband services are actually very different. They're different in the eyes of the law, and they're different in real life. Wireless telecommunication services refers to wireless phone calls. That is small data. Now, broadband, either wireline or wireless, that is referring to internet, video, and gaming, and that is very big data. Now, transmitting small data through the air requires very little power, but trying to do wireless broadband through the air requires a gargantuan amount of power. If we use wired options for broadband, like cable or fiber, then we can move the big data for the internet, video, and gaming at far less power. That's why wireline broadband and wireless broadband are not functionally equivalent services, and they need to be handled differently and appropriately for each one. Clearly, the best, most energy efficient solution for big data is fiber optic cables directly to the homes. This is completely consistent with the values in Scottsdale's general plan. And so Scottsdale needs to set a clear preference for wireline broadband everywhere, going wired, and provide enough wireless for the telecommunications services. That's the sweet spot that Paul and I are going to be talking about, and that's the solution we need. So big data by fiber optic, small data by wireless. So the 4G, 5G rollout in Scottsdale is using egregious amounts of power right now and precious resources. This is completely inconsistent with, and it threatens almost every single value and protection that are in both our Scottsdale General Plan and the Arizona Constitution. And the solutions we have can fix that. Right now, we're facing three big problems in Scottsdale: problems of public safety, privacy, and property values. All we're asking Scottsdale to do is to do its part to locally regulate the operations of the WTFs so that we're following federal law. And we want the wireless companies to follow the law as well, per the law, to use the minimum amount of power necessary to carry out the communications desired, which we know is only for wireless phone calls. The solution must consider—
Hello, how are you?
Hello. If you could go ahead and mute yourself. We are so glad you're here, and we're just going to go through some slides, and then we're going to take Q&A. So the solutions that we have to consider need to have appropriate VHP recipes. Now, the V stands for vertical offset, H is the horizontal offset of the tower, and the P is the maximum power output. So appropriate VHP recipes are a balance of all the three key parameters in order to protect the quiet enjoyment of streets. We're going to compare on this slide the VHP recipes for on the top, a properly sited macro tower, and just below that where it says SWTF, that's a so-called small wireless telecommunication facility that is in the public rights of way. And these are what we have all over Scottsdale. The metric that matters the most is how much power is showing up in your bedroom. Now you can see from the chart that by the time the power from a macro tower, which is far enough away to be safe, by the time that enters your bedroom, 0.002 radiation units are what are coming into your home. If you compare that right below to a small WTF that's placed typically 35 feet vertical, 60 feet away from the home, this is emitting an average of 50,000 radiation units. What that means, if you divide 50 million by 0.002, you get 25 million. This means that from a small WTF, the power that's entering your bedroom is 25 million times higher than from a properly sited macro cell tower. And that is what's ruining the quiet enjoyment of our streets. But the good news is that the City Council has the authority to fix this. Now this, what you're looking at right now, this is real evidence from harm that these SWTFs are causing. This is a piece of information that's already been placed in the City of Scottsdale public record. So 3 pictures. The one on the left, the 3-year-old and 6-year-old children who live in that 2nd-story bedroom became ill with microwave radiation sickness within just 3 weeks of Verizon powering on that SWTF that you can see right in front of their home. The children went to the doctor, they received medical diagnoses, but the family was still forced to spend over $10,000 to shield their home from the excessive radiated power from that SWTF. The woman in the second house in the middle, she was diagnosed with a brain mass that had to be surgically removed after only 3 months of exposure of that tower you see. And on the right, the woman in the third house lost over 20% of her home value because she had to sell right away because she is somebody who is already electromagnetically sensitive. This is an ADA disability that's recognized by the Federal Access Board, and it's estimated that about 3 to 10% of the population worldwide is electromagnetically sensitive. The next problem from this excessive power is an unconstitutional 24/7 surveillance. Millimeter wave technology is already used in airport scanners that capture nearly nude images. And that's something that I know personally, I don't want images like that of myself or my family. And I know that you and your constituents don't want that as well. There's also a security problem. As we know, there's been a lot of hacking, everything from companies to entire cities like Tel Aviv in Israel, because wireless is much easier to hack into than wired connection. Another problem is the decrease in property values. It's well established that values decrease when a house is built near a high voltage electrical power lines. The thing is that the same thing is happening with homes that are being built near cell towers, or cell towers that are being built near homes. So reports have documented that the decrease in property values is around 20%. That's really significant. A survey from the National Institute for Science, Law, and Public Policy found that 94% of homeowners are less interested and would pay less for property located near a WTF. This 20% decrease, and I've seen numbers up to 30%, that can significantly decrease the city property tax revenue, which would present a huge problem, especially considering all the economic losses that we've already had from COVID. I don't know how we can balance next year's budget if this further decrease in tax revenue were to occur. Another problem is that the permit applications in Scottsdale lack a National Environmental Policy Act, or a NEPA, review. As of August 2nd, 2019, every WTF in the country must complete a NEPA review. The City of Scottsdale can require written evidence of this NEPA review as an application requirement. And we also have the power to take down facilities that are operating without these required NEPA reviews. Finally, this is the big elephant in the room that the wireless industry has been lying about and falsely saying that you can't do anything about, that your hands are tied, which is pure propaganda. There is scientifically proven biological harm from pulse-modulated microwave radiation. That's the type of man-made radiation emitted by cell towers. So let's take a look just at insects, for example. The same millimeter waves that are used in 5G technology have been used for decades as pest control. This is something that the wireless industry doesn't want us to know about. There is documented evidence already of a link between bee colony collapse and electromagnetic power through the air. So what we need you to bear in mind is that if we lose our pollinators, we stand to lose our agriculture. The bioinitiative color charts that you see here, these were sent to you as preparation for the meeting. These detail 2,300 published peer-reviewed studies, showing harm in 8 different categories. These categories range from sleep disorders to cancer, neurological issues, infertility, brain tumors, to disrupted immune function. Over 4,000 biological effects have been documented. And the reason is that RF microwave radiation is the most studied toxin in the entire medical literature. And that's completely contradicting the false propaganda that you might hear from the wireless industry. So it might be hard to believe that if the health effects are really this bad, that our government wouldn't have spoken out against this public health hazard. But unfortunately, the truth is that recent history shows us this isn't the first time that big business has overridden public safety. You may recall similar damage that was done to the public by products that were deemed safe until enough people were either sickened or died, and then the public outcry prompted legislative changes. For example, asbestos was once thought to be harmless. Tobacco, ads aimed at children and adults were endorsed for years, even after the Surgeon General had established a link between smoking and lung cancer. DDT. This ad campaign was one of many that promoted widespread use of DDT, even after so many studies had proven harm. Entire cities were sprayed with DDT, and the children would routinely run after the DDT trucks. It was like a game that they'd play every week. And then there's lead, both in gasoline and paint. This harmed untold numbers of people. And many changes weren't even instituted until the late 1970s, which again was decades after research had shown that lead was toxic. This is a situation we're in now. So all of this information begs 2 questions. First, why is the promulgation of electromagnetic power through the air an even more serious public health threat? And another question is, how can one single technology be responsible for so many health effects that affect everything from our brains to our hearts to our blood, even our ability to reproduce? In fact, so much so that leading scientists are pushing to reclassify EMF from a class 2B to a class 1 human carcinogen. So those are the questions that we need to answer. And one part of the answer lies in the fact that our bodies are actually electrical in nature. They are exquisitely sensitive to even the tiniest electrical signals. This chart shows just how little power can affect our bodies, starting with amounts at the very top of the chart in millionths of radiation unit. 1 millionth of a radiation unit affects brain waves. At 2,000ths of a unit, that's what we were at with the macro towers that are properly placed, where everybody can get 5 bars on a cell phone. But what kind of numbers are we measuring currently on the streets in Arizona? If you look down on the chart, it's not common to have 10,000, 20,000, even 50,000 radiation units. And that's the range that causes leukemia, sleep disorders, cancers. So seeing how sensitive we are to even very low power is why we've got to stop the wireless industry from putting out so much unnecessary power. Another reason that EMFs cause so much downstream damage is the fact that EMFs affect our DNA. Evidence shows that they actually cause 2 kinds of DNA damage, single strand and double strand breaks, something that not only affects us, but it affects our future generations as well. In 1999, the National Institutes of Health called for the longest, most extensive, most expensive study ever conducted because they wanted to put to rest once and for all the question of whether RF microwave radiation caused biological harms at levels below the levels that heated tissue, what's called thermal levels. So The National Institute of Health's National Toxicology Program, the gold standard of research, spent $30 million over 19 years and proved clear evidence of cancer and DNA damage for very low levels of power, 900 megahertz and 1800 megahertz exposures. This photo you're looking at shows healthy DNA on the left. The middle photo shows damage from the unraveling of the DNA helix that's caused by harmful ionizing radiation. That's not what's coming from cell phone towers. But we all know that ionizing radiation is harmful. In fact, researchers had to use the equivalent of 1,600 chest x-rays to get this much damage that you see in the middle photo. The thing is, if you look at the photo on the right, that's from non-ionizing radiation, the same stuff that's being transmitted by the WTFs. And the industry says, oh, it's safe because it's non-ionizing, but you can plainly see that both the ionizing radiation and non-ionizing radiation are causing DNA damage. There's one final piece of critical information that we need to share before we can address how we can fix these problems. And this is really important. At the Scottsdale City Council's September 15th work study session, there was an astute council member who was aware of the potential lawsuits that could hit the city because of these proven health harms and the property devaluations. So this council person asked if the wireless carriers were sufficiently insured for lawsuits. Mayor Lane mistakenly assured the council that the local companies had sufficient insurance. This is critical, and this is false. The wireless industry, what they're doing is they use shell companies to apply locally for the permits. That shields big Verizon and big AT&T from all those claims of illness, injury, or death from the toxic emissions that the WTFs are putting out. Now, these shell companies do not have sufficient assets to cover the claims. They're actually designed to go bankrupt upon the first claim, which is going to leave the city of Scottsdale, the joint venture partner, holding the bag to pay for the claims. The image you see of the video is all this is expertly explained by attorney Mark Pollack in this video. It's at one of the links on this slide. And actually, it turns out Mark Pollack is going to be conducting a Zoom meeting with the Chandler city attorney on January 15th to discuss all these insurance issues. He's a phenomenal attorney and one of the world's experts on this issue. And we are urging you to ask Scottsdale attorney Sherry Scott to watch this 19-minute presentation and attend that meeting on the 15th as well. So obviously, you're being faced with a seemingly impossible conflict of having to uphold your oath of office to protect public safety, property values, and the quiet enjoyment of streets, and providing advanced telecommunications services. The solution lies in understanding that even the advanced telecom services do not include wireless broadband, and therein lies your ability to uphold both of these obligations. So, we are facing right now a fork in the road with potentially devastating effects that you can see on the left and good solutions and outcomes on the right. If, however, the city uses its legal authority to regulate all three parameters, vertical and horizontal and power, we're going to have an entirely different landscape. By doing this, the city can preserve the values of Scottsdale, provide a potential income stream for the city through policing fees, which is something that Paul's going to explain next, and we can maintain our acclaimed status as the most livable city in the United States. So at this point, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Paul McGavin, who's an RF expert who works with cities around the country to find workable solutions.
See, can you unshare your screen? That would be helpful. Okay, so hi everybody, that's about our 20 minutes. So I'm not going to try to take too much more time because the most important part of today is the discussion that we can have about this. But I think Val did an excellent job of explaining what is up for grabs, and that is regulating the power. Once you do that, you pretty much have solved the problem. The good news is that cities have the ability to regulate the power. It's just that the wires industry doesn't think, it tells you you don't. That's just not true. So I'm going to now go share my screen and just finish up with a couple of more slides. Okay. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing. So can you see this first slide on the screen at this point? Yes?
Yes.
All right, so essentially what are they doing? They're building factories. Factories are inappropriate for residential areas. These factories take raw materials, the data coming through your fiber optic cable, and mush it together with electricity to push up on a pole to spray it through the air. That's the factory. Well, this is a toxic pollutant. This is already defined that way by the wireless industry themselves. There are many words for it. You can talk about microwave radiation. You could talk about volts per meter, microwatts per square meter. But at the end of the day, it's the same stuff. It's just electromagnetic power through the air. Look, we all understand electricity is best in a wire. It's more efficient that way. It flows along the copper cable. Hey, data is even more efficient. It pulses by light through the fiber optic cable. The minute you try to put it through the air, well, it thuds into the water molecules and trees and homes and children. And so these are bad things because you don't need to put power through the air, not as much as they're doing. All right. So as we know, it is just too much power. If you cut it down to size, we're in better shape. Here's the biggest problem too. You're used to thinking about waves being smooth, kind of curves like the red one on the top. Well, when you start putting data on those waves, now you're whacking out the shape and it becomes extremely erratic. And this is why it's so biologically active. These are microsecond, very short peaks that go up 10 or 20,000 times high and all the way back down to zero, and another one and all the way back down to zero. But the wireless industry has a little trick. They measure the average, which says, oh, it's only about 1 or 2. But your body sees a series of bullets at 20,000. That's what's really going on. Okay. Hey, take a look at the pink line. You see this little animation? When waves kind of come together, they're additive. This is what's called resonance. And what they're about to do is put a whole sandwich of frequencies out into the residential areas, and you're going to get all kinds of addition out there that is impossible to predict. This is just way too much power. Here's a big chart. Why do we break it up this way? Well, the blue things are kind of what we've had over the past 2 or 3 years. All right. This is just the 4G world plus some Wi-Fi. But all the black is what's coming. This is the stuff, this is the part of the 5G revolution, they say. But they've already made the decision that the whole column to the right isn't working out very well. They're already not doing it anymore. They said, oh, we got it into 2 or 3% of the country and we're not going to continue doing it. We're going to actually just stick to the column on the left. And that means you're going to be from 600 megahertz at the bottom all the way up to about 6,000 gigahertz. Well, once they make that decision, there's no reason to be in the public rights of way. They can easily reach a neighborhood from 2,500 feet away, just like they used to for the last 20 years. They haven't looked carefully enough at the original documents and the original laws to figure out they have a lot of authority that they are not exercising. They need to do that. All right. First, number one, what are we in? Everybody understands it. Why are we on a Zoom call? We have a national emergency. We've been in one for almost a year. Well, what does that mean? Well, there's only essential activities out there. Essential activities are only the operation and maintenance of telecom facilities, not the building of new facilities. You have the ability to pass a moratorium today. A lot of cities already have. They don't have to fight these applications. They're just putting it all on hold until COVID-19 is gone. So these are the basic asks today. Please stop building new facilities. It's easy. Give time back to your city staff. Just pass a moratorium until this thing is over. Then you could take a look at what kind of laws do we want to pass for protection. And then we want to actually have a decent broadband plan. And Val hit the nail on the head. Big data by wire, small data through the air. That's the sweet spot. Hey, here's the ways to fix the problem. Most people are restricting you to aesthetics. And look, they are ugly. There's no doubt about it. These things are ugly. But that's not the only thing. The big thing is to say, well, what if we could cut this down to a 50th of the size? Could we do that? Oh, yeah. Instead of a 4-foot antenna, 15 inches in diameter, we could have a 4-inch antenna, a 1/2 inch in diameter. Instead of 28 cubic feet, like the one in the middle that woman's standing next to, that's how much they're allowed. That's 28 cubic feet right there. Instead of that, oh, well, you can actually come out with a power supply the size of your hand, okay? Well, is it going to look better in your neighborhoods? You bet it will. But most importantly, it's going to lower the power. That's the point. All right. How do you get this done? You get this done by Stop listening to the wireless industry. Get your own objective data. Put it in the public record. This is what you need. This is signal strength of second by second on every street in Scottsdale, and you log it every 6 months. This costs your city nothing. All right. You actually make the wireless industry pay for this. Then you'll have real information and you'll know for sure whether or not an antenna is needed or not. All right. So it's very simple. None of these antennas are really needed. That's the
Paul,
issue.
can I interrupt you for a second? We have a
Yes.
couple of state and city people who need to leave at 12:30, and they have a few questions in the chat, and I just want to make sure that they get their stuff answered. Before
Tell
they
you
go.
what, why don't I just cut short right now and go right to that? Okay. Let's go for some questions and answers. And to do that, you'll have to unmute yourself if anybody wants to talk.
I'm sorry.
That's
Hi,
right.
Kirsten
Hi, how are you?
Engel. Hi, and thank you so much. This is super helpful, and I'm sorry that I have something else at 12:30 that I have to jump off to. But I did just want to ask, what is the game plan here? Because this is a very convincing presentation that you all are doing. And so I'm trying to figure out, why is the industry using so much power and building these too big installations when it seems it would be cheaper for them to do something smaller, as well as better for all of us? Is there some bigger plan out there that we should be aware of, that they want to build out into something bigger?
Well, yes, the plan is 24/7 surveillance. That's the plan. And when they have more power, they can actually watch you walk around inside your house. That's why you don't want to let them do that. That's unconstitutional. What else? They want to sell you, stupidly, wireless television. You don't need wireless television. It just makes more money for them. That's it. Do they have any laws to support this activity? Zero. None. All they have is preemption for telecommunications service. That's wireless phone calls. That's it. All it takes is a city to strap on the cojones to
Right,
say no.
I'm ready for it, so I am going to jump off. So thank you so much. Okay. I'll
Okay.
look forward to listening to the whole thing.
No worries. That's fine. Okay. Bye-bye. Any other questions? I mean, I can do a few more slides, but it's not critical because we have all the PDFs of all the slides. We're happy to send them all out to you. But
So we do have a question from Tom, who's, I believe, one of the new Scottsdale City Council people, and I know maybe he's already left, but he said,
Oh,
have any other
still
cities
here.
followed your plan?
all right, Tom, go ahead. Give us your question.
Yes, has anybody followed the plan that you've discussed here?
Well, of course, my town, you have to understand who I am. I got the veto of our state bill in 2017. About a group of 12 of us fought the wireless industry and won. And then we came into my town and we passed a local ordinance that did zoning. So there will be no small cells anywhere in residential zones in Petaluma, California, because that's not necessary. They only put it in commercial and industrial zones. And in addition, they've been really smart. They said, well, we can't allow too much density, so we're going to spread these things out. We're going to put 1,500 feet between any two. And we're also going to say, you know, some people live in mixed use and commercial zones, so you still can't be within 500 foot of a house. That's the way it is. And so you also can't put any equipment above ground. Sorry, maybe the antenna, everything else in the ground, because it's ugly, because you don't need to look at it, because you want to preserve the aesthetics of your neighborhood. Make it difficult for the wireless industry. Here's your goal. You want to build the least number of these things as possible, because once they own the location, then they can come back next year by federal law and make it taller and wider and more power and all the rest, unless they thought into your fuse. That's not what we've talked about. So here's the bottom line. Once you know the vertical and the horizontal, you do a little math and you say, cool, here's the fuse for that pole. That's all the power you get. And attached to that fuse is a policing fee. So if you blow that fuse, you can come back in and ask us to replace it, but we'll take $10,000 from you. Thank you very much. And if they blow it a second time, well, I'm sorry, that's now $25,000. If they blow it a third time, well, it was a 3 strikes and you're out program, so now you lost your permit. So you got to follow the local laws. And that's a way that you can sit down and say, you know, the state kind of screwed you guys a little bit. They're trying to like push you in a corner and say, oh, you can't do anything. Well, they weren't creative enough to regulate the policing fees. Hey, man, I'd do that today. I want to start earning some money off the wireless industry right now. And how do I do that? It's a little metal box, lock and key. You put a $5 fuse in there. Hey, that's our part of the pole. Sorry, guys. That's all the power you're going to get today. Why do we make that much power? Just so you could do telecommunication service. Oh, we want to do video. Well, tell you what, put that fiber optic cable a little further to the house and you could do video. That's the way we do video in Scottsdale because we care about energy efficiency. You see, we're a green, sustainable city. We're not here to just blast away effective radiated power 24 hours a day. That would be dumb for us. We're not going to do that. But hey, we're going to make sure everybody can make a phone call. That's fine. This is your sweet spot. This is where you operate. See? Did that help you?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Other questions? I'm happy to do slides. I'm happy to stop and talk. Whatever you want, Val. What do you want?
I have a question too. You go first, Valerie.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask what questions you guys had.
Okay. My question is, have any of the other cities in the state of Arizona followed through with your recommendations?
Chandler's going right down the path right now. We got a 10-person committee that we're forming, and it's going to have 2 people from the wireless industry, 2 city council members, 2 people from city staff, 2 people like me, experts who are not with the wireless industry, because you got to keep them honest, okay? And 2 members of the community, all right? So this is like 10 people that can sit down and balance these things, okay? At the end of the day, the wireless industry is not the king of your town. There's more important things than just your cell phone signals. All right. So you fit them in with everything else. You care about your property values. You care about quiet enjoyment of streets. You care about nuisance laws. You care about a lot. Well, we have a national law that makes sure that there's enough signal for wireless phone calls. So you peg everything to that. And once you've achieved it, there's no more preemption. It just floats away. It's done. You don't have to put another antenna in if people can make a phone call. And that's what that little ordinance was about, the We Want It ordinance. It's written evidence, wireless antenna need test in telecommunications. It's just a catchy acronym for We Want It, okay? But it just puts all the power back to you. You see, all the power, all that data gets in the public record. Nobody has to argue anymore, right? The public sees it. The planning people see it, the city council can see it, everybody can see the same thing. Well, we have minus 85 dBm here. That's enough for a phone call. No, you can't go there. Well, what about over here? You're kind of, leaving those low income people out of the whole mix. You got to go serve them now. That's what they want to do. They want to cherry pick your rich neighborhoods and overserve them without going to the people who actually need the service.
So in Sam Hughes in Tucson, they've already put up these things every few blocks. Is there any way that we can get more control, or is it already too late for us?
Oh, it's not too late for you. This is all about NEPA review, National Environmental Policy Act. All you have to do is establish they went in without National Environmental Policy Act review. Guess what? They all do. How about that? Now you get a chance to go ahead and file complaints with the FCC. I talked to them on October 19th. I asked them exactly that question. What happens to these cell towers that have gone up when there's no NEPA review? What are you going to do about that? And so the point is, you can take them right back down. It's kind of like you build a fence and you build it 6 inches too close to your neighbor. Oops, what do they make you do? Pull it down. Here we go. Start over. Do it right. That's the way it's going to go here in Tucson.
So can our neighborhood ask for a NEPA review, or does that have to be through the city?
No, you can do it. You can go right to the FCC. We are burying them in complaints right now. We probably have like 3,000 complaints on their desk right now. Because these things are all going in. They lost a lawsuit. All right. They wanted to get by without environmental review and they lost the lawsuit. And so now they have to have environment, but they're pretending they don't need it. It's all BS. You get to catch them on this and you get to say, hey, I'm sorry, you got to follow the rules here. That's the way it is.
I think it's important to point out too that they've been telling city attorneys across the country, oh, we don't need the NEPA reviews. That's just for special circumstances. And what's happening is that there's nobody who's telling the cities that actually that's not the fact at all. And so one of our biggest hurdles is kind of getting through, people who've heard something for 24 years. Saying, oh, we don't need a NEPA review. This is harmless. Your hands are tied. That's our biggest challenge. And that's one of the reasons we're really excited that we've got some government officials who are willing to actually do their due diligence and look at this.
Look, the bottom line is that people generally are so busy doing everything else in their lives, they don't actually read the law. They don't actually read the FCC orders. They don't realize what they mean and don't mean. All they do is they listen to someone else's interpretation of what it means. Well, the wireless industry is going to interpret everything to their benefit. And they're going to sit down and say with authority, oh, yes, of course you have to do this because an FCC order means you have to follow it. Well, that's not true, just so you're really clear. There's a lot of FCC, some of the FCC orders they properly source their authority, in which case it does have the force of law. Good, there are some like that. The ones that happened in 2018, the ones for no moratorium and small cell deployment are not those. Those are only presumptive orders, which means they are only statements of preferences. You can get that set aside in court, because they can't undo 24 years of case law. They can't put language into the 1996 TCA that's not there. So this is what they're trying to do, but you can easily combat it just by pointing at the law and saying, no, we don't have to do that. And they can maybe take you to court, but they probably won't because they know they're going to lose. So they're just going to leave you alone. And they're going to go down the block to the other dumb town and try to get into that town. But you guys could hold firm. That's what I would do.
I'd like to just briefly review. There are several options that cities have, as Paul has talked about. One of them is, because we're in a state of emergency, we can legally call a moratorium on these WTFs. Another thing is we'd like cities to do what Chandler's doing, which is assign a committee so we can actually solve these problems. One of the resources that was sent to you was the New Hampshire report. They about a year ago assigned several experts and citizens to look into this and came up with the same conclusions, that there's a lot we can do about this. That's a 300-page document, but we can certainly summarize that for you. The other solutions that we have is to go after the permits that have been illegally and incompletely filled out. They don't have the NEPA review, but really the solution that cuts to the chase is to just turn down the power. That satisfies HB 2365, the fast track law. It's within our policing powers, and the beauty is that we can charge wireless industry for going over a safe amount of power that provides everything they're supposed to provide. And really that fork in the road slide, either we're going to be potentially bankrupted from lawsuits and property value devaluations, or we can actually add to our economy by just using some policing fees. And like Paul said, charging the wireless companies if they violate what we think is a safe standard. So we have lots of options. Our hands are not tied. Problem is, a lot of people have heard for 24 years, your hands are tied.
Well, so right here in the order on this slide, hopefully you can see it, FCC Order 18-111. This is the no moratorium order. Yet they wrote in paragraph 157, in the case of a natural disaster or other comparable emergency, a moratoria is legally permissible. That's correct. That's at the federal level. That trumps your state law. COVID-19 is such an emergency. This is all set right here. You want to follow the rules that are in place? Follow this rule. It's in place. We're all set. You guys can now buy yourself some time.
You know, something else that's going to help too is getting the medical profession privy to this information. And Elizabeth Kelly, who's the director of the Electromagnetic Safety Alliance, is organizing the 2021 EMF conference coming up. Libby, can you just talk for a moment about that?
Yes, thank you, Val. I live in Tucson, and I am organizing the EMF Medical Conference 2021. It's going to be held January 28th to 31. It's virtual, it's online, and we are offering 16.5 continuing medical education credits to health practitioners in the United States. This conference is designed to educate and train health practitioners on how to prevent, recognize, and treat EMF-associated illness. So it's very timely to where we are today, where people are being harmed. They go to the doctor, they report their symptoms. The doctor doesn't know what's wrong with them, and they write them a prescription for their headache, and nothing changes because the person doesn't realize the source of their headache is environmental. And if they cleaned up their environment, the symptoms may go away. So there is a connection between EMF and health effects. It's well established. So at our conference, we're going to be featuring medical doctors and scientists, including the scientist who designed and managed the U.S. National Toxicology Program study that we just reported out in 2018, which found clear evidence of cancer, cardiomyopathy, and a lot of dysplasia, which means that it was a long-term study. Had it gone longer, that dysplasia would have turned into more cancer. So we are bringing together 36 experts to talk about this, and we invite you to register. And so look forward to hearing from you. If you want to contact me directly, the conference website is EMF Medical Conference. No, excuse me, start over. EMFconference2021.com.
Thank you so much, Libby.
So we definitely have the ability to defeat this in our state. But the one thing we're lacking is manpower and numbers, and governments take action when enough people put pressure on them. And so we just need more people involved in whatever way you can, if it's just pinging your city council, if it's meeting with your state reps, or just making public comments. The smallest bits of action add up to a lot. So we need you.
It's difficult. First of all, I'll be new on city council. We have a list of objectives that we want to accomplish, and it's difficult to continue to add. On the other hand, I'm a family scientist, and my son did a project a long time ago that involved radar guns in the police. And we saw how harmful those radio waves were to plants that were growing in a controlled environment. So I know this is damaging, and I know this is harmful. But if I start talking about it, let's just say on my Facebook page, is there one place or one reference where people could go to get information that they could understand? Because, I mean, I understand basically the overview of what you're saying, but now we want specifics.
Sure.
Can people go and listen to the meeting that Gilbert is going to have for 15 minutes with the mayor? Is there one website where people can go and begin to get organized for the movement?
Thank you.
That's kind of
question.
To make it more simple, because what you did is great, but it's darn complex.
Yeah.
You may not think it is because it's your bag, but it is complex. And the more complex it is, the less likely people are to follow what you want them to do.
Excellent point. I just put in the chat box azforsafetech.org. We're going to post this meeting. We've got several other meetings, and our goal is to make it simple and understandable. For those, we're also linking people to another website called Scientists for Wired Tech. That's got all the technical stuff. So with both of those, I think people should be satisfied, because there is all the evidence is on our side. You know, I need to say, we're not here to throw anybody under the bus. The people in our government have worked so hard. Our attorney, our mayor, our council, they're just misinformed from very heavy, clever propaganda from the industry. And the other thing I want to point out in their defense is I've put well over 1,000 hours, probably about 1,500 hours, shut down a business 19 months ago. And it's just been focused on this. Those guys don't have time to do that kind of due diligence. So we definitely don't fault them. We just want to be able to give them accurate information. And if you can encourage the city attorney to attend the January 15th meeting with one of the top lawyers, she'll get her questions answered. So we're actually counting on you guys to help us, you know, get through that logger jam. We'd like to work with you and just be a bridge between the people who have the expertise and the people who are making the decisions. So we're just willing to do whatever it takes to make this easy for you, put you in touch with people, and really appreciate being able to do that. So Betty, that's something you could help us with, so we can help you, is to get us equal time. You know, the work study session, gave only one side of the equation. And because we were shut out of any public comment during COVID, we weren't allowed to publicly set the record straight. How can we help you? Because I think you will have a majority if we can just get this information put out publicly.
I think that's the key. I think that's the key, is that we need to make sure that the population knows what's going on and what they can do to make it safer or to prevent it. And, that's getting us the start of a movement. And right now with COVID and everything else going on, it's very, very difficult to get anybody's attention, even on something as important as this. So,
well, you do have to understand one thing, that it's already established that these exposures will do two things. They will cut your melatonin. So you have melatonin suppression, meaning you won't sleep as well, meaning you don't heal as well. And number two, it suppresses your immune system. So if you are concerned at all about people's outcomes in COVID, you would not be dumping this amount of power through the air to compromise immune systems. But if you cut the power, now you've done something effective to affect people's immune systems and allow them to strengthen.
Yeah.
See?
Good point.
okay.
So how can we get this word out there?
I have to think about it. I really do have to think about it. I think that probably another study session, to set up another study session on this, where we can invite you to present information. And that would be the start, and then try to get some people, I don't know, try to get some of the healthcare systems behind it. But again, everybody is so overwhelmed right now that it's hard to say, oh man, yeah, there's yet another danger. And it's ever present, and we need to stop it now, because now we can stop it before it goes too far. That's going to be very, very difficult to do right now.
Look, all we're asking is we have 3 laws and it's less than 1,000 words total. And if we pass those 3 laws, then we get control over this.
No, I get that. I get everything you're saying, because that's what we did. We changed the city charter. Took 2.5 years of a bunch of us, of hundreds of people working on it. But you got to plant the seed and make people know that they need this. And until they know that they need it, they're not going to buy into it.
Right.
All right.
Excellent. Let us know how we can help.
I
And
will.
there's one final question. The 3 laws that you just referenced, Paul, there's a question. Could you restate those laws?
Yeah, the first one is the We Want It ordinance, okay? And that's for the wireless antenna need test. That's just good data that is put in the public record every 6 months. It helps you to make decisions better about whether or not we should build this antenna. Very simple, very easy. You're in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. You have a decision that says, hey, they got to prove a significant gap in coverage in order to put an antenna in. They're skipping that, but you have every right to make them do that. And you just do that through putting good data on the record. That's one. The other one is, hey, pass that moratorium. That's easy. That's simple. You can do that tomorrow. And then now you're giving everybody time back, and then they can focus on COVID and focus on other things without getting all these permits processed. Okay, so stop building any new towers during COVID-19. The third one is vertical horizontal power, VHP. Hey, for the right vertical and horizontal offsets, then give them the amount of power necessary for telecommunication service. There you go. You get those 3 things done. That's going to be less than 400 or 500 words. You're done. And now you've wrestled this thing to the ground. And so now you have an opportunity to fix the ones that are already in and make sure the new ones don't have to be retrofitted afterwards, because they're going to come forward with smaller antennas and less power.
Okay.
Thank you.